This is our third video in a series of 4 on exam technique. In this video we look at OCR exam paper tips. Now although these tips were compiled based on our specific experience with the OCR exam, many of them are applicable to other exam boards. Tip number 1. Your exam papers are scanned before being marked online by examiners. Therefore, make sure to keep your answers written on the lines provided. If you can't do this, maybe because you've crossed out an answer, then in the first instance, use any continuation pages provided at the back of the exam paper. If you can't do this, write your answer in any other space provided and note to the examiner on the lines where to find your answer, even if it looks obvious. This allows them, when using their scanned online interface, to be able to jump to your answer easily. Tip number 2. Don't scribble out answers you think you got wrong so furiously that you can't read them. Simply cross out the answer neatly so it's still readable. Examiners are allowed to award you marks for crossed out answers if it's correct and the only one there. So scribbling it out could potentially end up costing you marks. Tip 3. It might sound obvious, but make sure your handwriting is readable. Examiners will try hard to read your answers, but if they're unable to, they can't award you marks. Your handwriting can accidentally get quite scruffy when you're under pressure, so pay attention to carefully form those letters. Tip 4. Computing exams aren't English exams. Examiners don't really want to have to hunt for marks within rambling paragraphs. Bullet points are the best way of presenting your answers unless the quality of your written answer is specifically stated as being assessed. Use a new bullet for each new point you're making. It will help to keep you focused. Put each bullet point on a new line. Tip 5. So, extending on this bullet point method earlier, make use of headings. So take the main points of the question and then list your bullets under those headings to answer the question. So for example, if you had a question that said, explain the purpose of the control unit, RAM and the ALU, 6 marks, you could put 3 headings, control unit, RAM and ALU, and then put your bullet points underneath those headings. Tip 6. Try not to use words that are in the question. So if a question said, state the purpose of the arithmetic logic unit, don't then write, it's a unit for arithmetic and logic. You wouldn't get the marks. Instead, write points that show your understanding. For example, it performs addition, e.g. It evaluates conditions, e.g. it performs binary shifts. Tip 7. Quite often you will find a question is presented as part of a scenario. There will be some context. When this happens, make sure you answer the question and the examples you give are related to that scenario. You won't get marks for generic points that aren't related to the context or the scenario of the question. Tip 8. You can't simply write down everything you know on a topic in response to a question in a hope of getting some marks. This is what's known in the examining world as a shopping list. So let's look at the example of the question, list 2 input devices. And here we can see a candidate's listed a number of bullet points. Now, the question is only worth 2 marks, and they have indeed listed at least 2 input devices in their answer. However, there's a long list and they also contain output and storage devices. This is a clear example of a shopping list and shows the examiner a lack of understanding. So even though there are 2 correct answers, it's more likely that this answer will be awarded 0 marks. Tip 9. Don't be afraid to use a diagram instead of text to help explain a concept if you feel it's relevant and you can make all the points you need to gain the marks. Annotated diagrams can be an excellent way to show your understanding of a tricky concept. Tip 10. If a question has multiple subparts marked like this, I, then you're allowed what's known as follow-through. This means that the second part will often need information from the first part. You could get the answer from the first part incorrect. As long as the method you use in the second part is correct, you'll get the marks for using the incorrect answer from part 1 in your answer. And this is common in binary-based arithmetic questions. For example, part 1 may say, work out this denary number in binary. Part 2 may say, work out another denary number in binary. And then part 3 may say, add the results of your first two numbers together. Well, you could get part 1 and 2 both wrong. So the binary you've got is incorrect. But as long as you line them up correctly and perform the correct addition for part 3, even though they're based on wrong answers, you could get the marks for this third part. Tip 11. Include examples in your answer that are relevant to the question and scenario. They demonstrate your understanding. Examples are often worth an additional mark. So in the question, describe a situation that can cause the processor to stop execution of a current task, you could write, when an interrupt is received on the control bus from another device, e.g., when a file has finished being transferred to RAM. And finally, tip 12. Don't repeat the question in your answer. You're using up valuable time and space for words that won't gain you marks. So if the question says state one characteristic of random access memory, it is okay for you to just write it is volatile. Don't write one characteristic of random access memory is that it is volatile. Be concise.